Hey there, Chad Herzog here from Arizona Arts Live. Thanks for joining me. I have a couple special guests that I'm so excited to share with you tonight. Frank Bair, audio engineer from Dust and Stone, tours around the world with some great bands and makes them sound really good, along with Sam Eagon, our technical director at Arizona Arts Live, sound master and engineer, and real Renaissance man. And I'll keep on talking about Sam because he's that kind of guy. Sam and Frank, thanks so much for being with me tonight. Really looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
What's it like for the both of you right now?
It's almost like everything stopped and then it's been creeping back together piece by piece. And the pieces just don't fit together the way they used to. I used to mix audio to listen to, and now I just mix audio for video,
That's a lot of how it's gone for me as well. I mean, obviously no live stuff, but between albums and for video, be it whatever.
Going from mixing audio to listen to and for all of us to listen to as audience members versus mixing to the let's just say to YouTube or the live stream. How does that differ for you?
One of my biggest challenges, something that does kind of take some time to get used to, is what the digital encoders do to the audio. So if you're mixing for a live stream or something like that, you always kind of have to account for like, well, things aren't going to sound quite as I hear them on my end. There's going to be some different stuff to try your best to accommodate for on that end.
I think the other thing is the devices that people are encountering music on, and that's been changing for years, but I would say 9 times out of 10, you're kind of mixing for somebody's phone,
Yeah. It's so limited.
Yeah. Or like a tablet or something. It's very few people have, like high fidelity listening systems that they, cruise YouTube on,
Have you had to change the studio as far as setup and just like, I'll say a rearranging renovation kind of situation either for these times?
Well, strangely enough, we did do some renovations recently, kind of more so out of just sheer necessity for, okay, it's been a long time. Like we've needed to do this, we need to do that. I'm not still sure how much COVID influenced that versus it was like, I mean, it definitely did have its influence because things have slowed down for sure. And kind of with the perfect storm of, okay, like things are slow and this is something that needs to happen as well. Let's just get all this stuff done, and makes people feel more comfortable, for sure. Like if you're going to be, singing, obviously you have to do that with your mask off, or like today with the horn players and stuff, same thing. There's a lot of breathing and unfortunately spit involved. So you kind of have to really, be mindful of that. And, same thing with the microphones. We definitely, try to, that's a whole, I'm sure Sam, you can very well relate to that, having to, almost double or triple down your microphone count.
So I think there is a blessing in the studio environment sometimes because a lot of studios are built around the ideas of isolation, so you do have doors to close between places, but I know like those last few sessions I did at my studio were not comfortable. It changed a lot quickly, and it turned into a much more worrying kind of situation. And it's just like the same way we do everything in life now. It's like you do this risk analysis when you decide whether or not you're going to go to the grocery store, or how you're going to do it.
Sam, you bring up some great points of how different life is and how everything's a risk factor, and it reminds me of a conversation you and I had in late March last year when this was all starting to come together, where we knew that COVID was a thing, but it was going to change the way that our spring was going to look. And it was also, Frank, the time that Sam and I were noticing a number of musicians trying to figure out, okay, our road shows are canceled. We're going to be at home for a while. How can we stay in front of audiences? And that's how the Tucson studio was born, is out of those conversations on what could we be doing? How could we help regional musicians out in creating a toolkit to look and sound the best from their homes? And Frank, you've also been involved in that with No Audience Live, and just wondering what it's been like for the both of you to go from those live shows every 4 or 5 times, 6 times, 7 times a week to transitioning to the video stream.
It's been a roller coaster with that whole thing. Yeah, no audience definitely kind of started off in a similar fashion, kind of being a culmination of like the 3, companies, a lighting company, an audio company that Sam and I work for, Arizona Pro Sound, and a video company, and just kind of going like, well, we're definitely not going to be deploying this equipment out like we used to anytime soon. What do we do with 3 warehouses full of stuff? Let's see what we can do with it, and kind of the same thing. And
I mean, talk about like a rapid, like a crash course, in like, oh my, like how you do this stuff, and when we were putting that toolkit together, it was like absorbing and just like sponging up all this information about DIY stuff, and then with no audience live, talking with Kevin Dowling about using iPhones taped to walls and stuff, like just really like scrapping it together, like we used to when when you're like you're going to record this band and you don't have enough stuff to do it.
I feel like the level of attention for folks watching live streams, or even pre-recorded stuff as well, like there's kind of a greater level of scrutiny, I feel like, on our technical execution, because you're not at a packed venue with your friends having drinks, and the drummer misses a beat or a mic goes out, it's like whatever. Whereas you're during now, like those people are at home watching on their TVs and going like, oh, sounds terrible, like that. It's like, oh god.
For the two of you, where session recordings were extremely oftentimes out of reach for musicians, now people can record and at least get lay that first track down in their bedroom or closet. What's that been like for the two of you watching this change?
I always think of it as like the studio business has changed into something of a hybrid. There are some things that you just can't really do without a studio, but there's ever growing list of things you can.
Some of the benefits, I don't know, I really appreciate about it is, often, with some artists, who haven't had the experience of a studio, consistently and aren't used to it, they might feel more comfortable in their bedroom environment, pouring out those emotions and everything. And then taking that final product to, someone like Sam or myself and saying, okay, now make it, make it better. So that's kind of nice. And it can be, it can be a psychologically challenging thing, to come into a space, that you've maybe never been in before, around people that you've never met before, and be like, okay, give me everything you got, like let it all out, feel comfortable. And, by the way, you're on the clock. So, so it kind of eases some of that tension, I feel like.
I wonder, as we think about live shows going away, or going away back in March when we were watching all of just our calendars clear out. And finally in November, we brought XIXA to the MSA Annex with some special guests. To hear from the both of you what that felt like, finally seeing a band on stage in front of an audience. And I hesitate when I say that, because we did have a live audience there, 2 sold out shows, which was amazing, but it was 200 people total, in a space that was built for 1,500 people.
Man, I started that whole thing trying to remember to put everything in the truck, like I'm like pulling out racks of gear I haven't looked at in 8-9 months, I felt really rusty.
It was definitely the same here, kind of like, you definitely felt rusty and, knocking the dust off and everything. And just, trying to remember, there's a lot of, a lot of stuff that goes into these things.
I don't know. It was like seeing your high school friend again, like, oh man, yeah. All right. Here we are. We're doing this thing that we've been doing, forever, but I don't know, it felt good. It felt like a release, you know, a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah. The day after too, like that day after a long show weekend, tired feeling, you know,
Yeah.
it was a very cathartic day.
Yeah. Missed that a whole lot, even though I
Yeah.
thought I wouldn't, but yeah.
So as we think about, or I guess maybe even as we know that it's going to be a while before we really get back into this swing again. Dr. Fauci a couple of weeks ago spoke at the Association of Performing Arts Presenters or Professionals Conference, APAP, and he's optimistic that we'll be back in this by fall. What do you both see the next 9 months looking and feeling like?
It's been really, really tough to gauge. Initially, you kind of associate, live shows with and touring, obviously with, a band's livelihood, and more so for independent, music, not so much the big Grammy winning stars and everything like that. And just how critical live shows and touring are to, a band's existence and how well they're doing. But I think surprisingly, there's still, from what I've seen and heard, label interest, which I think helps stuff out a lot. And it seems like people are wanting to hold on, for sure. As far as like safety goes, that's a really, tough thing. It kind of seems like the whole, format of what we did at the Annex back in November will kind of be the trend, at least for a little bit, until, vaccinations and that type thing, happening. So
I think that a handful of people will be able to kind of progress the idea of being a digital performer. And then a lot of other people are just going to start to struggle, and maybe flatline a little bit, which is kind of unfortunate, but at the end of the day, it's like I think at this point we're being a little bit like bombarded with online content, like that's so much how you experience music right now. My hope is that if everyone can weather the storm here, the appetite for people to go and see and do is going to be just like, I hope it's going to be like the big musicals during World War II and right after, like I want to see some just like sensational over the top shit, just like, and it's going to be there, because it's the show might be the show, but what's going on in the audience might be the sensational part, like.
Yeah, I think it will. It'll take some time, but I think I think it ultimately will. We've seen how, people still yearn for, live music and that whole experience. So, and I mean, even just what, we've been able to do, to adapt to this, I feel like just kind of shows, where that desire is and, how strong it still is almost a year out. So.
What's it going to be like to get not so much the bands back on stage, which is a concern of mine, because are the bands still together and do we all exist still? But just the tech side of things and back into it. What are you both thinking about that? And what are we going to do to make sure we have a labor force come those times when we can welcome bands back to our stages?
And that is a big challenge. I think that's going to be one of the biggest things. I think the hardest part is we're coming out of one of the best years that we've had as a local market in a long time. 2019 as a whole was, people were killing it. I think everybody, pretty much across the board, here in town wrapped up their year, reinvested for the next year, and then everything evaporated. And I know a lot of guys in the local who are working construction and doing things. And if you're, used to doing stagehand work for $15 an hour doing shows and you're making 25 building houses in the foothills, it's definitely going to be a big transition to come back. You're going to have to really want to come back to do it.
You have the businesses side of it as well with, smaller, bars, restaurants and venues, who are, very much in the same boat. When you have coming back out of COVID, let's say, kind of like the Annex situation where, we could only do 100 people in a 1,500 person capacity, situation that puts everything on hard mode for, everyone, drastically diminishes, the income of that business and really,
Oh, there's no income in that business, Frank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gone. It's a total loss. Yeah.
Be very
Yeah.
interesting, to see, number one, who's left, when the dust settles, and how do we kind of go from there? Because it'll be same scenario. How do you pay bands? How do you pay engineers and staff, and that type of thing? So it's gonna take some pretty hard work and sacrifices, I think.
One of the things we at Arizona Arts Live have been talking about is preparing Tucson for this renaissance that's about to happen, that we're hoping we can really be driving forward. What are you two looking forward to, or what do you see Tucson's renaissance looking like in the coming years?
You remember when you could go out and you go downtown and you could make big loops, and there's all kinds of people out and stuff going on, and you could encounter things that you didn't even know were going on. It's like, oh man, there's like 9 bands playing down here. There's this going on. There's I think you can start to see like little inklings of it. Like in the last year, the mural population in Tucson has like tripled. But I think when people can occupy these environments again, I'm just looking forward to like the energy of life again. Just the pace picking up a little bit, and the opportunities to be back.
I think, like Chad and Sam, you guys were talking about earlier, the whole DIY approach, as it's forced us to, kind of do this and learn. I'm sure there's a ton of folks out there. It's been really cool seeing some of the other bands, and artists, really branch out. Yeah, like the mural thing, and just kind of get, adapt, as well. What can we all do is so I think when it comes back, it'll be pretty explosive. And like you said, you can back to just walking around town and like, oh, there's this happening and that happening, and like weird pockets that you never would have expected before and stuff. So
yeah, for sure. And people are getting so crafty and learning so much. Like, so if you already were like on a cool path, and now you've learned a whole bunch of stuff about technology integration into your art, and you're doing all kinds of like the next phase of how what you've learned to do translates into what you used to do is also going to be sweet. But there's a lot of people who probably aren't streaming anything on YouTube that are doing some really cool stuff at home.
Definitely not dormant at all. Creative endeavors. So.
Yeah.
Well, I have no doubt that Tucson's ready for a renaissance, and I'm even more confident that we're going to get there because of people like you, Frank, Bair, and Sam Eagon. Thanks so much for spending a little bit of time on your Friday night with me, as we learned a little bit about how you're all shaking out during these times, and really appreciate all you're doing for the arts and the art scene here in Tucson, and the musicians here in Tucson, our region, and thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Thanks for involving us too. Yeah. So.